জয় রাধা মাধব জয় কুঞ্জ বিহারী। জয় গোপী জনবল্লভ জয় গিরিবর ধারী জয় গিরিবর ধারী। জয় গোপী জনবল্লভ জয় গিরিবর ধারী জয় গিরিবর ধারী। জয় সুদানন্দন ব্রজ জনরঞ্জন যশুদানন্দন ব্রজ জনরঞ্জন যশুদানন্দন ব্রজ জনরঞ্জন যশুদানন্দন ব্রজ জনরঞ্জন। যমুনা তীর বনচারী যমুনা তীর বনচারী। জয় রাধা মাধব জয় কুঞ্জ বিহারী। 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 জয় গোপী জনবল্লভ জয় গিরিবর ধারী। গোপী জনবল্লভ জয় গিরিবর ধারী। জয় রাধা মাধব জয় কুঞ্জ বিহারী। জয় রাধা মাধব জয় কুঞ্জ বিহারী। হরে কৃষ্ণ 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 হরে 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 রাম 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 হরে হরে। Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Nitai Gauranga Jayo Nitai Gauranga Jayo Jayo Prabhupada 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 Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotra Shri Srimad Divine Grace Abhay Charan Bhakti Vedanta Swami Shila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotra Shri Srimad Divine Grace Shila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Shila Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskrityam Naranjaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiraye Nashtaprayeshvabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 15th chapter, text number 44 and 45. 44 doesn't have a purport, so I'll read it by myself. 45 will chant together. Teva amushya vadanasita padmakosham udvikshya sundara taradhara kundahasam labdhashisha punaravekshya tadiyamangri dvandvam nakarunamaniishrayanam nidhayuhu. Translation. The Lord's beautiful face appeared to them like the inside of a blue lotus, and the Lord's smile appeared to be a blossoming jasmine flower. After seeing the face of the Lord, the sages were fully satisfied, and when they wanted to see him further, they looked upon the nails of his lotus feet, which resembled rubies. Thus they viewed the Lord's transcendental body again and again, and so they finally achieved meditation on the Lord's personal feature. Text number 45. Pumsam matim griya mrigayatam iha yoga margair Dhyanaspadam baumatam nayanabhiramam Paunsnam vapurdarshayanam ananya siddhair Outpattikai samagranan yutamashtabhogai Pumsam gatim mrigayatamiha yoga margair Dhyanaspadam baumatam nayanabhiramam Paunsnam vapurdarshayanam ananya siddhe Outpattikai samagranan yutamashtabhogai Pumsam gatim mrigayatamiha yoga margair Dhyanaspadam baumatam nayanabhiramam पौंस्नं वपुर्दर्शयानमनन्यसिद्धैर् औत्पट्टिकैः समघृणन् युतमष्टभोगैः Word to word meaning. Pumsam, of those persons. Gatim, liberation. Mragayatam, who are searching. Iha, here in this world. Yoga margaihi, by the process of Ashtanga Yoga. Dhyana aspadam, object of meditation. Bahu, by the great yogis. Matam, approved. Nayana, eyes. Abhiramam, pleasing. Paumsnam, human. Vapuhu, form. Darshayanam, displaying. Ananya, not by others. Siddhaihi, perfected. Outpattikaihi, eternally present. Samagranan, praised. Yutam, the Supreme Personality of Godhead who is endowed. Ashtabhogaihi, with 8 kinds of achievement. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. This is the form of the Lord which is meditated upon by the followers of the yoga process, and it is pleasing to the yogis in meditation. It is not imaginary but factual, as proved by great yogis. The Lord is full in 8 kinds of achievement, but for others, these achievements are not possible in full perfection. Please repeat the translation. This is the form of the Lord which is meditated upon by the followers of the yoga process, and it is pleasing to the yogis in meditation. It is not imaginary but factual, as proved by great yogis. The Lord is full in 8 kinds of achievement. But for others, these achievements are not possible in full perfection. Purport. The success of the yoga process is very nicely described here. It is specifically mentioned, Jai Shri Radha Krishna Chandra Shri Nitai Gauranga Shri Prabhupada Ki. It is specifically mentioned that the form of the Lord as four-handed Narayana is the object of meditation for the followers of Yoga Marga. In the modern age, there are so many so-called yogis who do not target their meditation on the four-handed Narayana form. Some of them try to meditate on something impersonal or void, but that is not approved by the great yogis who follow the standard method. The real Yoga Marga process is to control the senses, sit in a solitary and sanctified place, and meditate on the four-handed form of Narayana, decorated as described in this chapter, as he appeared before the 4 sages. This Narayana form is Krishna's expansion. Therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement which is now spreading is the real topmost process of yoga practice. Krishna consciousness is the highest yoga performance by trained devotional yogis. Despite all the allurement of yoga practice, the 8 kinds of yogic perfections are hardly achievable by the common man. But here it is described that the Lord who appeared before the 4 sages is himself full of all 8 kinds of perfection. The highest Yoga Marga process is to concentrate the mind 24 hours a day on Krishna. This is called Krishna consciousness. The yoga system, as described in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, or as recommended in the Patanjali yoga process, is different from the nowadays practiced Hatha yoga as it is generally understood in the Western countries. Real yoga practice is to control the senses, and after such control is established, to concentrate the mind on the Narayana form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Shri Krishna, Lord Krishna, is the original personality of Godhead, and all the other Vishnu forms with 4 hands decorated with conch, lotus club and wheel are plenary expansions of Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita, it is recommended that one meditate upon the form of the Lord. To practice concentration of the mind, one has to sit with the head and the back in a straight line, and one must practice in a secluded place sanctified by a sacred atmosphere. The yogi should observe the rules and regulations of brahmacharya to strictly live a life of self-restraint and celibacy. One cannot practice yoga in a congested city, living a life of extravagancy, including unrestricted sex indulgence and utter adultery of the tongue. Yoga practice necessitates controlling the senses, and beginning of the sense control is to control the tongue. One who can control the tongue can also have control over the other senses. One cannot allow the tongue to take all kinds of forbidden food and drink at the same time advance in the practice of yoga. It is very regrettable fact that many unauthorized inclination towards yoga practice. It is very regrettable fact that many unauthorized so-called yogis come to the Western countries and exploit people's inclination towards yoga practice. Such unauthorized yogis even dare to say publicly that one can indulge in the habit of drinking and at the same time practice meditation. 5,000 years ago, Lord Krishna recommended yoga practice to Arjuna. But Arjuna frankly expressed his inability to follow the stringent rules and regulations of the yoga system. One should be very practical in every field of activities and should not waste his valuable time in practicing useless gymnastic feats in the name of yoga. Real yoga is to search out the four-handed super soul within one's heart and see him perpetually in meditation. Such continued meditation is called samadhi, and the object of this meditation is a four-handed Narayana with bodily decorations as described in this chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. If, however, one wants to meditate upon something void or impersonal, it will take a very long time before he achieves success in yoga practice. We cannot concentrate our mind on something void or impersonal. Real yoga is to fix the mind on the form of the Lord, the four-handed Narayana who is sitting in everyone's heart. By meditation, one can understand that God is seated within one's heart. Even if one does not know it, God is seated within the heart of everyone. Not only is He seated in the heart of human being, but He is also within the hearts of cats and dogs. Bhagavad Gita certifies this fact by the declaration of the Lord, Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Riddeshe. The Ishvara, the supreme controller of the world, is seated in the heart of everyone. Not only is He in everyone's heart, but He is also present within the atom. No place is vacant or devoid of the presence of the Lord. That is the statement of Ishopanishad. God is present everywhere, and His right of proprietorship applies to everything. The feature of the Lord by which He is present everywhere is called Paramatma. Atma means the individual soul, and Paramatma means the individual super soul. Both Atma and Paramatma are individual persons. The difference between Atma and Paramatma is that the Atma or the soul is present only in a particular body, whereas the Paramatma is present everywhere. In this connection, the example of the sun is very nice. An individual person may be situated in one place, but the sun, even though a similar individual entity, is present on the head of every individual person. Individual entity is present. In Bhagavad Gita, this is explained. Therefore, even though the qualities of all entities, including the Lord, are equal, the super soul is different from the individual soul by quantitative power of expansion. The Lord or the super soul can expand himself into millions of different forms, whereas the individual soul cannot do so. The super soul, being situated in everyone's heart, can witness everyone's activities, past, present and future. In the Upanishads, the super soul is described as being seated with the individual soul as friend and witness. As a friend, the Lord is always anxious to get back his friend, the individual soul, and bring him back home, back to Godhead. As a witness, he is the bestower of all benedictions, and he endows each individual with the result of his actions. The super soul gives the individual soul all facilities to achieve whatever he desires to enjoy in this material world. Suffering is a reaction to the living entity's propensity to try to lord it over the material world. But the Lord instructs his friend, the individual soul, who is also his son, to give up all other engagements and simply surrender unto him for perpetual bliss and an eternal life full of knowledge. This is the last instruction of Bhagavad Gita, the most authorized and widely read book on all varieties of yoga. Thus, the last word of Bhagavad Gita is the last word in the perfection of yoga. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that a person who is always absorbed in Krishna consciousness is the topmost yogi. What is Krishna consciousness? As the individual soul is present by his consciousness throughout his body, throughout his entire body, so the super soul or Paramatma is present throughout the whole creation by super consciousness. This super conscious energy is imitated by the individual soul who has limited consciousness. I can understand what is going on within my limited body, but I cannot feel what is going on in another's body. I am present throughout my body by my consciousness, but my consciousness is not present in another's body. The super soul or Paramatma, however, being present everywhere and within everyone, is also conscious of everyone's existence. The theory that the soul and the super soul are one is not acceptable because it is not confirmed by authoritative Vedic literature. The individual soul's consciousness cannot act in super consciousness. This super consciousness can be achieved, however, by dovetailing individual consciousness with the consciousness of the Supreme. The dovetailing process is called surrender or Krishna consciousness. From the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, we learn very clearly that Arjuna in the beginning did not want to fight with his brothers and relatives. But after understanding Bhagavad Gita, he dovetailed his consciousness with the super consciousness of Krishna. He was then in Krishna consciousness. A person in full Krishna consciousness acts by the dictation of Krishna. In the beginning of Krishna consciousness, dictation is received through the transparent medium of the spiritual master. When one is sufficiently trained and acts in submissive faith and love for Krishna under the direction of the bona fide spiritual master, the dovetailing process becomes firm and accurate. This stage of devotional service by the devotee in Krishna consciousness is the most perfect stage of the yoga system. At this stage, Krishna or the super soul dictates from within, while from without the devotee is helped by the spiritual master, who is the bona fide representative of Krishna. From within, he helps the devotees as Chaitya, for he is situated within the heart of everyone. Understanding that God is seated within everyone's heart is not, however, sufficient. One has to be acquainted with God from both within and without, and one must take dictation from within and without to act in Krishna consciousness. This is the highest perfectional stage of the human form of life and the topmost perfection of all yoga. For a perfect yogi, there are 8 kinds of super achievements. One can become lighter than air, one can become smaller than the atom, one can become bigger than a mountain, one can achieve whatever he desires, one can control like the Lord, and so on. But when one rises to the perfectional stage of receiving dictation from the Lord, that is greater than any stage of material achievements above mentioned. The breathing exercise of the yoga system, which is generally practiced, is just the beginning. Meditation on the super soul is just another step forward. But to obtain direct contact with the super soul and take dictation from him is the highest perfectional stage. The breathing exercises of meditation practice were very difficult even 5,000 years ago. Otherwise, Arjuna would not have rejected the proposal of Krishna that he adopt this system. This age of Kali is called the fallen age. In this age, people in general are short-living and very slow to understand self-realization or spiritual life. They are mostly unfortunate, and therefore, if someone is a little bit interested in self-realization, he is likely to be misguided by so many frauds. The only way to realize the perfect stage of yoga is to follow the principles of Bhagavad Gita as practiced by Lord Chaitanya. This is the simplest and highest perfection of yoga practice. Lord Chaitanya demonstrated this Krishna consciousness yoga system in a practical manner simply by chanting the holy name of Krishna as presented in Vedanta, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and many important Puranas. The largest number of Indians follow this yoga process, and in the United States, it is gradually spreading in many cities. It is very easy and practical for this age, especially for those who are serious about success in yoga. No other process of yoga can be successful in this age. The meditation process was possible in the golden age, Satya Yoga, because people in that age used to live for hundreds of thousands of years. If one wants success in practical yoga practice, it is advised that he take to the Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And he will actually feel himself making progress. In Bhagavad Gita, this practice of Krishna consciousness is described as Rajavidya, or the king of all erudition. Those who have taken to this most sublime Bhakti Yoga system, who practice devotional service and transcendental love of Krishna, can testify to its happy and easy execution. The 4 sages Sanaka, Sanatana, Sanandana, and Sanat Kumara also became attracted by the features of the Lord and the transcendental aroma of the dust of his lotus feet, as already described in verse number 43. Yoga necessitates controlling the senses, and Bhakti Yoga or Krishna consciousness is the process of purifying the senses. When the senses are purified, they are automatically controlled. One cannot stop the activities of the senses by artificial means. But if one purifies the senses by engaging in the service of the Lord, The senses not only can be controlled from rubbish engagement, but can be engaged in the Lord's transcendental service as aspired to by the four sages Sanaka, Sanatana, Sanandana and Sanat Kumara. Krishna consciousness is not therefore a manufactured concoction of the speculative mind. It is a process enjoined in Bhagavad Gita. Manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Thus sends the Bhakti Vedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurubhe Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminidhi Ramine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jayo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. पुंसाम गतिर्मृगयताम योगमार्गे ध्यानास्पदम बहुमताम नयनाभिरामम पौंस्नम वपुर्दर्शयानम अनन्य सिद्धै औत्पट्टिकै समग्रनन्युतमष्टभोगै. This is the form of the Lord which is meditated upon by the followers of the yoga process, and it is pleasing to the yogis in meditation. It is not imaginary but factual, as proved by great yogis. The Lord is full in 8 kinds of achievement, but for others these achievements are not possible in full perfection. So this chapter, which is known as Description of the Kingdom of God. Earlier to this verse, we read about how the 4 Kumaras, who were basically impersonalists, but they developed a personal taste by inhaling the fragrance emanating from the tulsi offered at the lotus feet of Lord Narayana. And in the 44th verse, there is a description of the Lord's face. The Lord's beautiful face appeared to them like the inside of a blue lotus, and the Lord's smile appeared to be a blossoming jasmine flower. After seeing the face of the Lord, the sages were fully satisfied, and when they wanted to see him further, they looked upon the nails of his lotus feet, which resembled rubies. Thus they viewed the Lord's transcendental body again and again, and so they finally achieved meditation on the Lord's personal feature. You see, anything which is very beautiful, we want to see it. We are attracted by beauty. All of us are attracted by beauty. Something beautiful is there, immediately our eyes go towards that. But beauty has 2 forms. What are the 2 forms? One is the material form, one is the spiritual form. To what we are attracted, material or spiritual, is dependent on our state of consciousness. The 4 Kumaras, they were impersonal, which means they are meditating on the Nirakara form. But because they got access directly to the Lord's attributes. The fragrance of the Lord is one of the attributes of the Lord. And because of that, their focus of Nirakara became Sakara. They were immediately attracted to the lotus form of the Lord. And they are describing the Lord's face is like a blue lotus. And when he smiles, that smile is like the form of a blooming jasmine flower. So they saw the Lord and they are seeing this beautiful form. And then they wanted to see more. Then suddenly their eyes went to the nails of the Lord. And the nails of the Lord were like rubies. So when they saw all these things, they wanted to see again and again. So what does this say? Whether you are the only thing we can take from this is that whether you are an impersonalist, whether you are a materialist, somehow or the other, if you get association of the Lord or the association of a pure devotee, then your material inclinations, your impersonal inclinations are also gone. You will immediately become personal. That is why association is so much stressed. Prabhupada said association with the holy name daily, day in, day out, association. We are touching that holy name. He is the direct representation of Krishna. Holy name is the personality of Krishna. Just like the sugandha, the fragrance emanating from the tulsi offered to Lord Vishnu, directly it created a transformation in the consciousness of the four Kumaras. Similarly, whatever state of consciousness we may be in, if you chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra in the prescribed way, with full attention, with full faith, with full Shraddha, there will be an awakening of Krishna consciousness within our heart. That's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Param Vijayate Cheto Darpanamarjanam Bhavamaha Davagni Nirvapanam Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadu Jivanam Anandaham Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatmasnapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. The Sankirtanam process, the holy name, chanting of the holy name, the kirtan of the Lord is definitely so potent that it can wipe out all kinds of dirty things situated deeply within the heart and establish ourselves. Anandam Buddhivardhanam. We are morose, we are sad, we are depressed. It can lift you up. Because the Lord's form is Satchidananda. He is full of Sat, Chit and Ananda. So the Lord's name is non-different from that Satchidananda form. So when you touch, when you sparsh, as soon as you touch the holy name, immediately, no matter what kind of consciousness you are in, you will develop that full of blissful state you will achieve. If we are engaged nicely in chanting, we will experience this. Early morning, if we are able to chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, when the material forces are at its lowest force, at that time, if we engaged in devotional service, whether it is deity worship, whether it is chanting of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, if we are seriously engaged in the early morning in practice of Krishna consciousness, then immediately we will be situated in Anandaham Buddhivardhanam. There is no sense of moroseness. Just like if we miss our morning sadhana, we become morose. We have no energy. We have no positive strength. Early morning, if we get up, chant Krishna's name, attend Mangalarti, do deity worship, attend the Kirtana, nice Shravana, nice absorption in Krishna conscious reading and hearing. If we do, immediately we will achieve the liberated phase. That's the power of the holy name. Such a simple process it is. Prabhupada in this elaborate purport, what is Prabhupada stressing? Very elaborately Prabhupada is speaking. Why Prabhupada is speaking like that? Because in the current age and time, people are misled. People are misled into thinking that some gymnastic yoga, into some kind of a thing will give them spiritual emancipation. No. Such kind of yoga practice, like Prabhupada says, the so-called yoga practice that is being practiced now in this age and time, it will not give you any spiritual experience. Rather, it will only give you some physical experience. Because in Kali Yuga, even physical strength and physical ability is so low. People are very much happy, oh, it is giving me some physical benefit. But yet, Prabhupada is stressing that physical happiness, that physical experience that we are getting from this so-called yoga is very temporary. Its relevance is very, very limited. Whereas our scriptures, our holy scriptures, our holy saints, the idea of spirituality, the idea of Krishna consciousness is on a totally different plane altogether. People have no idea of what spiritual experience is. It's only when some great saint who comes and opens our eyes, like we offer our praise, Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya. Blinded by ignorance. In the material world, we are all blinded by ignorance. But it takes a great soul, it takes a great acharya to come and open our eyes and fill that eyes with lace that eyes with the tinge of love towards Krishna. Jnananjana Shalaka, lace that eyes with knowledge. Jnananjana, Anjana of knowledge. Anjana means, what do you call that? Ointment of knowledge. A person in knowledge, he sees things totally differently. A child is ignorant. A small child is ignorant. Because, why? Because his knowledge is very limited. Supposing a child sees a snake, a cobra coming in front of the child. The child will tell, oh, so nice, new rope, new toy has come, it will run to take that cobra. But an elder person who knows the danger of that same cobra, he sees that differently. Oh my God, this is death that is there in front of you. Please move aside. Come this side. Prabhupada in the purport is trying to explain like that to us. What is that Prabhupada trying to say? Sometimes we think, why is Prabhupada writing pages together? This shloka has 5 pages of purport. And if you read this verse, what does it say? If you just read the original translation, nothing significant I felt. When I first read this, today's verse, this is the verse, then I thinking, in this verse what is said? This is the form of the Lord which is meditated upon by the followers of the yoga process, and it is pleasing to the yogis in meditation. It is not imaginary but factual, as proved by great yogis. The Lord is full in 8 kinds of achievement, but for others these achievements are not possible in full perfection. You see, if you read just the translation, nothing very significant is there. But Prabhupada has given 5 pages purport for this. Why? Because an acharya, according to the time, place and circumstances, he sees what knowledge is required at this point of time for society. And we can see people are enamored, people are so, this one, by so-called yoga, so-called siddhis, so-called babas. Even people who are interested in spirituality, they are misled by all these things. So Prabhupada is making the real philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada has to explain so that people become redirected towards the real source of Krishna consciousness, the real purpose of human existence. Where we can get lost. So, Krishna consciousness is not an academic exercise. Academic exercise means you try to learn a concept. Okay, like for example, we go to the school, we go to the college. And in the college, in the school, they teach us concepts. Okay, this is the way this works. This is the way this works. We are taught different concepts. We sit for the chemistry class, some concept of chemistry is taught. We sit for the physics class, some concept of physics is taught. We sit for the biology class, some concept of biology is taught. We sit for the language class, some aspect of the language is taught for us. That is an academic exercise. Now, if Prabhupada were to translate and give purport as an academic way, Prabhupada has to write very, very limited thing. That means just explain what is there. No. Prabhupada's purpose, Bhagavatam's purpose is what? Is to take people who are misdirected to the real purpose of our life. In the first canto, the first chapters All the shlokas are establishing the purpose of Srimad Bhagavatam. So those aspects, Prabhupada is aware that, when I am talking, I need to ultimately establish that the real aim, the real purpose of human life is for this. And academically, what are the things also Prabhupada talks about to some degree. Just like in this shloka, it is mentioned, the Lord is full of 8 achievements. Prabhupada delves on it in just some 2-3 lines. What is this full achievements? One can become bigger than a big, one can become smaller than the smallest, one can become bigger than a mountain, one can become very powerful, he can control everything. But then what does he say? What does Prabhupada say? Are chodo, that is nothing. Prabhupada says that's not big deal. Real devotee, real yogi is not interested in all these things. A materialist, if he gets this, wow, what an achievement it will be for me. Become smaller than the smallest, become bigger than the bigger, become the most powerful, you can do anything, you can control anybody. They will do research on this. Let's do research on this. Let's work on this. Whereas Prabhupada is thinking totally differently. Prabhupada is establishing many other things. Then Prabhupada says, what is pleasing to the yogis in meditation? The same form which these 4 Kumaras directly saw Vishnu and felt can be felt within one's heart. Dhyana avastita tadgatena manasa pashyanti yam yogina. In the Rig Veda, is mentioned. What is that mentioned in the Rig Veda? Dhyana avastita tadgatena manasa pashyanti yam yogina. One who is situated in dhyana avastitaha. He is situated in dhyana, and then what do you do? Pashyanti yam yoginaha. Within his heart he is always seeing the Paramatma form, super soul form, the Chaturbhuja form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he is fully satisfied. Satisfaction happens only in relation to Krishna. This is, we must write it down in our brains. Repeatedly, satisfaction can happen only in relation to Krishna. If it is material thing, it is an illusion of satisfaction that happens, and that satisfaction which you have felt will not last long. You will immediately start anchoring, no, I felt like this, I want more, I want more, I want more. Endlessly, to infinite degree, you will keep on anchoring for satisfaction. Just like in the material world, Prabhupada says repeatedly, the form of the woman is very, very attractive. It attracts. A man is attracted by the woman, womanly form. And he runs, he tries to achieve that. He tries to satisfy this attraction through association with women. But for all you know, it will never be. I was reading one article In that article it says, "75% of people who have beautiful wives, who have very beautiful wives." You see that? 75% of people who have very, very beautiful wives have always wanted or looked for more women. What do we think? We think that, oh, see, my wife, my wife is not so beautiful. Or somebody may say, I don't even have a wife. That fellow, you see how much he has got such a beautiful wife with him, or he has got such a nice, beautiful girlfriend. Shastra says, even if you have the most beautiful wife, even if you have the most beautiful girlfriend, you will still look for more. That is the nature of this material world. It is not going to satisfy. Whereas if you see how Dhruva Maharaj reacted when he saw the beautiful form of Vishnu. What was Dhruva Maharaj's reaction? Dhruva Maharaj's reaction is, Kacham vichinvan napi divya ratnam swamin kritartosmi varam na yache. Dhruva Maharaj's reaction is, oh my God, what did I anchor for? He wanted something material. Dhruva Maharaj wanted something material. But when he saw Vishnu, oh my God, I don't want that. What a fool I was. I don't want any vara. Varam na yache. I want you. This is the power of the Lord's form. That's why Prabhupada says that if you dress the deity nicely, if you do the deity worship nicely, if you chant nicely, then naturally your material inclination, your desires for material beauty, your desires for material fame, your desires for material things will be diminished. Automatically it will diminish. You will lose that inclinations. That's why Bhagavatam says, even if devotional service is imperfectly performed, yet it has the potency to take you to a different level. Tadvag visargo janataga viplavo yasmin pratishlokam abaddhavatyapi namanyanantasya yasho ankitanihat shranvanti ghayanti grananti sadhavaha. See, Srimad Bhagavatam is saying, Tadvag visargo janataga viplavaha yasmin pratishlokam abaddhavatyapi. Srimad Bhagavatam, the verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam may not be in proper context, in maybe differently situated, yet they will give great joy to devotees who are constantly engaged in hearing this. It's a tried and tested method. It works. It is not simply talking. So in this elaborate purport, Srila Prabhupada is constantly stressing about what are the things that Srila Prabhupada is talking about. Prabhupada is talking about the so-called impersonal aspects, the meaningless of impersonal aspects. Jiva wants that connection. Whereas impersonal life is what? About disconnection. Yes, disconnection with material world, but connection with what? There is no connection. You are disconnected with material, you are disconnected with spiritual. You are neither here nor there. It is not a happy state to be in. Whereas Krishna consciousness is disconnection with matter and connection with Krishna. You have to give up the negative and take up the positive. You cannot say, I give up the negative and I am okay. No. If you give up the negative, you come to the positive. Otherwise, you will again go back to the negative. Prabhupada talks about that. Second, Prabhupada says about the Paramatma feature. How one has to connect himself to Paramatma. One has to get knowledge. Prabhupada says the perfection in this. Prabhupada is saying one has to get perfect. The perfect state of existence is to take dictation from within and without. From within and without. Prabhupada says dictation from within. Dictation from within means dictation, whatever I am guided by Paramatma. And without means I am guided by the spiritual master's instructions. For a Krishna consciousness devotee, practicing devotee, this is perfect way of life. We have to work at both these levels. And then Prabhupada uses the same purport to say how the so-called understanding that the Atma and Paramatma are one. No. The Atma is individual consciousness, whereas Paramatma is Sarvavyapi. In every individual, Paramatma is present. The individual Atma is conscious of only within his sphere, whereas Paramatma, since he is spread in every living entity, he is a conscious entity of the entire universe. That is super consciousness. Paramatma is super conscious. Individual Atma is not super conscious. It is conscious of itself, that's all. So this beautiful purport of Srila Prabhupada, wherein Srila Prabhupada is actually, out of deep compassion, Prabhupada is trying to actually guide a misguided society towards what needs to be essentially practiced in the form of Krishna consciousness. We'll stop here if there's any questions or comments. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की, Prabhupada की.